So, welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's current affairs in a very short span of time within 30 minutes. Now, just after watching this lecture, you need to revise this lecture as well because revision helps in consolidating these current affairs in your memory. Otherwise, you'll quickly forget them. Now, to revise these current affairs, you can download our notes, which are provided on our Telegram channel. Now, where can you find our Telegram channel? Well, just below this video in the comment section, you'll find a link. You'll just have to click on that link. It'll take you to our Telegram channel, and from there you can download the notes for this lecture. Okay, so let's begin today's discussion. But first, let's take a look at today's topics, or the list of topics that we are going to cover today. So in total, we'll be covering 4 topics. Topic number 1 is a news item related to security transaction tax. Recently, government data showed that security transaction tax collections have increased. So we'll talk about what this tax is. Then World Economic Forum's annual meet is going to happen in Davos. So what is World Economic Forum? What is this Davos summit? We'll talk about this. Then recently Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that by the end of SVAMITVA Scheme, property cards will be distributed to all house owners in the villages, and because of that 100 lakh crore of wealth would get created. So what is this SVAMITVA scheme? We'll talk about this. And in the end, we'll talk about Supreme Court's judgment on abetment of suicide. Generally, if someone commits suicide and if it is found that someone aided in that person's suicide or someone forced someone to commit suicide, okay, or someone created such circumstances that the person committed suicide, well, that person is also punished. Okay, that is known as abetment to suicide. Now, Supreme Court came out with a very important judgment with respect to this. So we'll talk about this issue. Okay, so let's begin today's discussion with topic number 1, which is security transaction tax. Okay, so security transaction tax is basically levied on securities transaction. Now, what do we mean by security transaction? Securities in this case means shares, okay, derivatives, equity, and whatnot. Okay, so let's suppose you sold 100 rupee share. Okay, you sold 100 rupee share, and security transaction tax is 1%. That means if you sold that share for 100 rupees, 1 rupee would go to the government as a tax. Okay, so security transaction tax is basically a tax levied on all the transactions, all the buying and selling of securities. Okay, now recently it was found that despite the volatility in the stock market has been very volatile in recent times. Okay, it has been going up and then it has been falling drastically also. Despite this volatility, STT collection has shot up by over 75%. Okay, this is also despite the fact that the government doubled STT for futures and options. Okay, one is shares. People buy and sell shares. People also buy and sell derivatives, futures, options. This is highly speculative share market trading. So government basically doubled security transaction tax on highly speculative, highly risky share market trading, which is derivative trading, which is future and options trading. Okay, what are futures, what are options? Well, you don't have to worry about that. We'll cover that when we'll cover share market. Okay, right now just understand that future and option trading is a very risky stock market trading. Okay, well, government doubled security transaction tax on future and options trading so as to discourage people to do this because it is highly risky and highly speculative, and it also dampens macroeconomic stability of the country. Okay, but despite doubling security transaction tax on futures and options, people did not stop doing these trades. Okay, people still followed futures and options, people still traded in futures and options, and that is why STT collection has shot up by 75%. In fact, Security Exchange Board of India, which regulates stock market, and RBI both had raised concerns over volumes in futures and options trading, and for this reason they increased the tax. But that tax isn't working at all. People are still opting for futures and options. Now, What you need to know is what is security transaction tax. Now, in brief, I have explained it to you. Security transaction tax is nothing but tax levied on every buying and selling of securities. Now, these securities can be shares, mutual funds, and whatnot. Okay, so about STT, it is a direct tax charged on the purchase and sale of securities listed on the recognized stock exchanges. Not all stock exchanges, recognized stock exchanges like Bombay Stock Exchange, National Stock Exchange, right? So, securities like shares, which is also called equity, okay? Their purchase and sale, well, security transaction tax is levied on it. Always remember, security transaction tax is not an indirect tax like GST. It is a direct tax like income tax. Okay. Now, this tax is not levied by state governments. It is levied and collected by central government. Remember this fact also. Now, this tax is governed by a law. The name of the law is Security Transaction Tax Act, which has specifically listed various taxable securities and securities transaction. So under this law, those securities are mentioned on which STT can be applied. Okay, so these securities are equities, derivatives, but trade in commodities or trade in currency, let's suppose you buy and sell dollars, this is not taxable under STT. Only equities, derivatives, mutual funds, they are mentioned in this law as securities, and therefore STT is applicable on these things only. Always remember, there are a few things you have to remember because MCQs might be asked on this. First of all, STT is a direct tax. It is levied and collected by central government. It is not levied on commodity and currency transaction, and the name of the law is STT Act. Okay. Now, what about futures and options trading? Well, it is a bit technical. Okay. Therefore, I'm not going to delve into explaining this in the current affairs lecture. This topic is separately dealt with in the economics lectures. Okay. But you just have to remember that future and options are a form of derivative trading or derivative securities. Okay. And in the budget of 2024-25, Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman had proposed to double STT on future and options, which was effective from October 1st, 2024. Okay, but still, STT collections have skyrocketed. That is why many people are perplexed or surprised that why did that happen? And they have reported it in news, and that's why we are discussing it. Okay, all right. Now let's move on to our second topic of the day, which is World Economic Forum's Davos Summit. Okay. Now, World Economic Forum is a very famous body, international body. Okay. In this forum, business leaders, company leaders, economists, ministers, RBI governors or central bank governors, all these big shot people come and attend its annual summit where they discuss economic challenges facing the world and the solutions that can be opted for. Okay. Now, this annual summit of World Economic Forum always happens during the winters in Davos, Switzerland. That is why this is also known as Davos Summit. Okay. So the World Economic Forum is holding its annual meeting from January 20th to 24 in Davos, Switzerland. Many big shot people are attending. For example, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, Chinese Vice Premier this, then many company leaders like Facebook's head, Kia Motors head, okay, BMW's head, many business captains, ministers, central bank governors. These people are attending this summit. Okay. From India, the Indian delegation is being led by Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnav, and the Chief Minister of Maharashtra is accompanying him, Devendra Fadnavis, Chief Minister of Telangana. They are also accompanying him. Okay, in fact, Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh is also like, people are speculating that he might also go. Okay, so it's a very big summit. Now, about World Economic Forum, you need to know its history. So, who is the founder of World Economic Forum? You should know this. So, it was founded in 1971 by a German professor. He was a professor in University of Geneva. Geneva is also in Switzerland, but he was a German professor. So German professor Klaus Schwab, he founded World Economic Forum in 1971. But in 1971, he named this organization as European Management Forum. Initially, it was just a management forum. That means it only used to discuss issues related to management of companies. But then, Klaus Schwab, being a professor, introduced a concept of stakeholder capitalism. Now, what do we mean by stakeholder? Look, there are many companies out there. Okay? All these companies have shareholders, those who own this company, right? So, for example, Mark Zuckerberg owns 20% share of Facebook, then there are other people who own some shares. Okay, right? So there are many shareholders in a company, right? General public holds some shares. So companies generally work in a way that it benefits or it provides maximum benefit to its shareholders. This is known as a company's fiduciary responsibility. Fiduciary responsibility means that all the actions taken by the company or the CEO of the company are taken for the benefit of or maximum benefit of shareholders. This is the only responsibility of a company's CEO. But Klaus Schwab said that the company shouldn't only work for its shareholders, those who own that company. Okay, companies should also work for their stakeholders. Now, stakeholders are those people who are affected by the actions of this company. It includes shareholders, but it also includes the employees of this company, the customers of this company, the society in which this company is working, the country in which this company is working. All these organizations or all these people are stakeholders of this company. They might not be shareholders, but the actions of this company impact them. Okay, so he said that capitalist companies or companies should also work for the benefit of the stakeholders. Okay, employees, suppliers, community at large. So this concept is known as stakeholder capitalism. Remember this term, it can be asked in prelims this year. Okay, so every year at Davos, business leaders, government leaders, civil society leaders gather to discuss global economic issues, and they also discuss solutions to these problems. Okay, now, more about WEF. Well, the attendees of this Davos summit include the paying members of World Economic Forum. So many companies, big companies, okay, are paying members of World Economic Forum. Various organizations are paying members of World Economic Forum. So they are naturally invited. But sometimes World Economic Forum also invites selected invitees like political leaders, business leaders, economists, celebrities, journalists. Now, the summit goes on for 5 days, and in those 5 days, discussions on global issues happen in around 500 in 500 sessions. Okay, WEF has become a forum for various stakeholders to meet and discuss global and regional socio-economic issues. Now, how is World Economic Forum funded? Well, it is funded by partnering organizations. Now, these partnering organizations are mostly big shot companies who have an annual turnover of at least $5 billion. So these are massive companies, okay, who fund WEF. All right, okay. Now let's move on to our third news item, which is the SVAMITVA scheme. So, Prime Minister Modi on January 18 said that once property cards under the Center SVAMITVA scheme has been distributed in all the villages of the country, it could unlock economic activity worth over 100 lakh crore. So, once all the property cards are distributed under SVAMITVA scheme, 100 lakh crore of economic opportunities would get generated. Okay. Now, what is SVAMITVA scheme? We'll come to that. But first, let's take a look at the second point. He said 2.25 crore people in the villages have so far received legal documents for their houses under the scheme. Now, what is Swamitva scheme? So basically, the full form of the scheme is Survey of Villages and Mapping with Improvised Technology in Village Areas, Swamitva. Okay, and it is a project of Ministry of Panchayati Raj. Okay, so Ministry of Panchayati Raj is the nodal agency for this. All right, now what would happen under this scheme? Basically, under this scheme, uh, surveys would be taken of village areas. Okay, different. I mean, through drones, through satellites, detailed surveys would be done, and those people who own a house in villages, okay, they will be issued a property card against their house. Generally, you have documents to prove the ownership of your house in urban areas. Okay, but for houses, I'm not talking about land, I'm talking about just houses. For houses in village areas, there is lack of property records. And that is why purchase and sale of houses in village areas is a problem. There is purchase and sale of land for agriculture, but purchase and sale of houses is a problem because there is no documentation for that. Plus, you cannot put your house as collateral in a bank to take a loan, because there is no document for a house. There is document for land, not a house, right? So under Swamitva scheme, property cards will be issued to all the homeowners of village areas. Okay, what will happen? Now, once the property card is issued, once you have a property card for your house in a village, you can put it as collateral in a bank and take a loan. You can buy and sell properties, right? So this would open up real estate house market in village areas. Again, economic opportunities would open. It would also help gram panchayats to collect property tax, because this would really help in deciphering which person owns which property, right? So it would definitely improve these things in village areas. Okay, currently these things are very nicely managed in urban areas, but village areas, rural areas are somewhat lag behind. So this Swamitva scheme will provide property cards after due survey, drone survey, satellite survey. The scheme was launched by PM Modi on National Panchayati Raj Day. National Panchayati Raj Day is celebrated every year on 24th April 2020, with a plan to survey all rural properties using drones, prepare GIS based maps for each village. Distribution of property cards began on October 11, 2020. Okay, so what are the benefits of this scheme? Like I mentioned before, you now have an asset to leverage it in a bank and get a loan or other financial benefits. Plus, it would also help gram panchayats raise property tax, okay, which would really help the financial position of gram panchayats. It would also lead to liquidity in the property market, because now purchasing and selling of houses can take place in property market properly with proper documentation. Okay, and it would really help in rural planning, because this Swamitva scheme also involves creating maps, village maps. Now, these property records and maps would be available at Gram Panchayat level. This would be updated in land records of the state government, right? And that would help in taxation, construction permits, elimination of encroachment. So it will help in rural planning. If you have proper maps of your village, then you will be able to plan better for your village, right? That was the idea. Hence, Prime Minister Modi says that 100 lakh crore worth of opportunities would be raised through this scheme. Okay. And last, Supreme Court on abetment of suicide. Supreme Court highlighted the need to sensitize investigative agencies and courts in abetment of suicide cases under Section 306 of Indian Penal Code 1860. Okay. Recently, what Supreme Court has said, that the cases related to abetment of suicide sometimes are frivolous. Okay. For example, let's suppose a bank manager is telling a customer who has taken a loan to return back that money. Now that customer is unable to return back that money, so he commits suicide because he's in debt, and he blames the bank manager for it. Now, police actually picks up the bank manager on the accusation of abetment of suicide, that you forced him to commit suicide. Now that would be wrong, because that bank manager is doing his duty. Now, Supreme Court has said that sometimes these investigative agencies pick up people for abetment of suicide without due diligence, right? You just mechanically pick up people for this. Sometimes people commit suicide that their boss is harassing them, or their boss is not increasing their salary. There have been cases like that. Supreme Court says that the investigative agency should apply due restraint in such cases. Okay, you cannot mechanically pick everyone for this. Okay, that is what the Supreme Court has said. Now, Supreme Court made this statement in a case. SC made this statement while clearing charges against a bank manager accused of abetting the suicide of a man who allegedly took his own life after he was unable to repay his loans. Okay, the Supreme Court said, what is the why is this bank manager guilty? Okay, so you need to be more careful while picking up people for the allegation of abetment of suicide. Now, what does the law say? As you all know, that IPC, Indian Penal Code, has been replaced by Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. In the Indian Penal Code, the word abetment is defined in section 107 of IPC. Okay, in the Indian Penal Code, it is section 306, abetment of suicide. The punishment is written there. Okay, but the definition of abetment is provided in section 107. This section 107 IPC is now replaced by BNS, which is section 45 of BNS. Now, the law clearly says, first of all, the law clearly defines what abetment is. Plus, it clearly says that to prove abetment of suicide, one has to effectively show that the accused directly instigated or aided the deceased to die by suicide. So, either you directly instigated or aided his suicide. Okay, so you have to prove the direct connection. The punishment for this is provided in section 300C and can be up to 10 years imprisonment along with a fine. Section 306 is section 118 BNS. Okay. Now, what did the Supreme Court say? SE said that the police and the court should avoid unnecessary prosecutions in case of abetment of suicide, especially at workplaces. The court said that the bar of proof would be higher in cases where the deceased and the accused have an official relationship, whether it's a bank manager or a loanee or an employer-employee. You should be more careful in such cases. Okay. Plus, the Supreme Court also pointed out that as per National Crime Records Bureau, the conviction rate for abetment to suicide cases is 17.5%, which is very low. That means out of every 100 cases, only 17.5% get or are proved guilty in a court of law. That is very low. And because it is very low, because this is very low, that means majority of the cases are frivolous. So you shouldn't pick up anyone and put him into jail for frivolous cases. This is what Supreme Court has said. All right. And with that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. But it would add more value if you revise this lecture as well. So please do not forget to revise this lecture. And on that note, I'll be signing off. Thank you so much, everyone.